Poole with you this morning. I think you'll agree with me. Everybody deserves a home. Everyone should have shelter when the moon rises and when the rain falls during the evening. Well, last night, sleeping out on the streets of Darwin as the rain did fall was a bunch of local CEOs. There were over 30 of them, and they were there to experience something too many people in the NT live with every day, and that's living on the street. 12 times as many homeless and unhoused people in the NT as the rest of the nation. Jackson Wells is from National Shelter. He was one of the CEOs sleeping out last night, and also in the studio with us today is Annie Taylor from NT Shelter. Welcome to you both. Thanks for being here.
Good morning.
Thanks for having us.
How was your night last night?
Look, it was a little bit sleepless, but look, it puts into perspective, doesn't it, what a lot of Territorians go through every night. We have the highest rates of homelessness in the country, as you've said, and there are a lot of people sleeping rough. It's not just overcrowding. We have 9 times the rate of people sleeping rough out there on our streets, in our communities, using kind of makeshift shelters. It was rainy last night. It rained in the dry season, which is pretty unexpected for Darwin. So we were woken up at 4 a.m. and we had to collect all our stuff and run for cover. So yeah, reality check.
That was just the universe really driving it home to those CEOs, I think. Just more generally, how do you think everyone coped with the evening?
Well, from my perspective, just travelling up here to spend a couple of days with our sector through NT Shelter and some of our on-the-ground services, it was great to just understand how the issues are a bit different and felt differently in the Territory. I think last night the rain was a real leveller. You know, I think it puts into context, as Annie said, just what it's like to have to quickly scramble and get all your belongings together and try and find some shelter. And then, you know, for us to do that one night is a little bit of an inconvenience, but people have to do that every night of the year in some cases. So I think everyone felt that sense of responsibility to try and do better up here.
Mm. How would you describe the situation up here? You've said that worst in the nation, Annie. That's one of the things that you just said then. But it's quite complex, isn't it? It's not necessarily people living on the street. It's, you know, women in cars. It's elderly women as well who've gone through divorce. Mm. You know, it's campsites that are just sort of get made up. I mean, to give us the scope of what it looks like.
It really is across a variety of different cohorts here. So you mentioned people over the age of 55, older people, and that's something we actually spoke about quite actively last night in some of the activities we did at the Vinnies Sleepout. We have in the Territory, we had a 13% increase between the last 2 census in the number of people over 55 experiencing homelessness. So that rate is huge, but equally, if you're under the age of 25, you are, the homelessness rate is huge there as well. So it's across all aspects of society. You've got 1 in 25 Territorians accessing homelessness services in the Northern Territory, which is huge compared to the other states. So we face a lot of challenges here, and we simply don't have enough social and affordable housing to really meet the needs. We have homelessness services doing a great job. Vinnies is one who's out there with their food van every night. The point was made that when a lot of us are going home for the evening, they're heading out to make sure that they can reach people who are sleeping rough. But the scale is huge, and it really is across different cohorts. It could happen to anyone.
Is it a housing supply issue? Is that the problem?
Yeah, well, look, certainly from a national perspective, there's challenges with delivering enough supply against the demand, there's no doubt. And I think that stands out here in the Territory as well. You've got population growth factors, but it's not just an issue of supply. It's about the sort of intentional supply we need for people to meet people's needs from an income perspective and a capacity perspective. So we're big as a shelter movement on delivering enough social and affordable housing for people that are on low to no incomes. And there's lots of programs that are currently available across the country, and we need our state and territory governments to work with us there to deliver that volume of housing in their jurisdiction.
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a moment, but if you were tuned into AM before, we heard a report around housing. 250,000 homes were meant to be built in Australia last year. 170,000 were actually completed. A lot of people are thinking that high immigration levels has caused this problem with housing supply. What are your thoughts on that?
I might speak to that first. I think the way that we look at that from a shelter perspective is that it's incumbent on all of us to understand what our population intake looks like. We've always had high population movement coming in from overseas. Certainly since COVID, it's been higher than it has been historically, but it's been a feature of our nation's fabric since the Second World War. And I think our population, our planning schemes really need to interpret that population growth, whether it's immigration or even Southern Strait migration to northern states is a big factor of inflows as well. And we need housing targets that match the population movements that are occurring. So we try not to focus so much on the immigration intake and look at the population movements as a whole and make sure that our planning schemes and infrastructure investments are grappling with that. And that's where we have seen some shortcomings in the last sort of couple of decades.
Net overseas migration has dropped. The year before it was 555,000. Last year it was 301,000. I mean, those still seem like really large numbers. I mean, do they need to come down more than that?
Well, it's important to note in the last federal budget, if you study the budget papers, you'll see those numbers coming down over the budget and forward estimates. So they're coming down further, excuse me, even under the current government. I think in the fourth year of the forward estimates, it comes down to about 240,000. There's obviously a debate happening at the moment in this country about this, and there's some worrying language in our view in terms of how it's used as a political football. I go back to what I said earlier. Like, we see it as looking at all of our population intake, natural population growth, immigration, students, and also interstate movements as well. And we need to grapple with all of that across the country and make sure our infrastructure and housing plans accommodate it.
Okay, let's get to, you mentioned social housing and how there's just not enough supply. I was listening to our local radio station and it was another program sort of saying that the wait time for social housing or crisis housing in the NT right now, I think there's something like 5,000 people on a wait list. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so there's actually about 5,500 applicants on the social housing wait list as of 31st of December.
So where are they? I mean, you're on a list to get a house. Where are you in the like? Where are you while you're waiting?
You're surfing. You're sleeping rough. You're living in severely overcrowded housing, which is a huge issue in the Northern Territory, in remote, but also in our urban centres. I always, hasten to say that because we have an issue of severe overcrowding in our urban centres, and that's an issue I think we talk about a lot in the Territory, right? The fact that we don't have public housing or social housing that can accommodate the number of people who are forced to live in it because there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah, I heard as well about what's happening in Alice Springs and some other communities where families are on sleep rosters, where the kids are sleeping during the day, and the parents are sleeping at night, and obviously that has huge repercussions. They're not going to school and they're also out on the street at night because they've slept all day, because that's the only space available for them to sleep in their house. There's that many people in the house. Surely we can do something about that.
You'd hope so, and that's horrific. I think what a horrible situation, and it really underpins the fact that housing is the basis for everything. Again, we spoke a lot about this last night. You need a stable home to be able to engage in education. For young people, it is so important, and we're missing out here in the Territory on these really successful programs. Youth Foyers is an example of a program that it's an accommodation program for young people under the age of 25, and it exists in every other jurisdiction. We don't have it here in the Territory, so we need to be looking at what we need to do better here in the Territory to make sure that young people, but all people, have access to safe and secure housing.
I noticed that there's a model over east where the local council is selling land to social enterprise for the cost of $1 so that they can build homes. And those homes are more affordable, because affordability is the big issue, isn't it? Getting into the housing market. Is there something like that? Is there a model that's being explored like that in the NT?
Well, I might just comment on what you said first, because I'm from one of those states where that's occurring, and that's in Queensland, but it's in other states as well, where the local government is going, well, what else can we do? Because obviously the housing bid is often a state and territory responsibility with support from the federal government. Local councils are trying to, in most parts of the country, trying to lean into this issue as well, but they only have certain levers that they can pull and investments that they can make. Sometimes they've got land that can be used for housing, but they might not necessarily want to dispose of that land for a variety of reasons. So in that scenario, they're actually doing long-term leases. So effectively has the same value actually as selling the land, but they're still holding on to the land. And that allows like the community housing system to actually develop properties on that land and still be able to pay down the debt and deliver non-market housing for people who need it most.
Is that sort of the way caravan parks work, where you get a lifetime lease, basically? So for as long as you're alive, you get to live there, but you never actually own the land, the property?
Similar, and in this scenario, the council still owns the land, but it brings down the cost of development because you don't have the same land portion there, so you don't have to acquire land at a market rate. Brings that portion down, so you just got the cost of development in that sense, and that means that you can deliver product for a cheaper price point.
Right, so if the block of land costs $400,000, wipe that off, and really you're just paying for the build.
That's the theory.
Yeah, okay. What else? What are some of the other solutions that might work in the NT?
Well, look, we need to be looking at models like that, don't we? And the fact is that Darwin is the second most expensive capital city in which to rent a house now. So it's incredibly unaffordable for people to live here, and that just affects huge portions of our population who will leave if they can't afford to rent. We have a Northern Territory housing strategy which is going to be published in the next couple of weeks, we hope. That's been out for consultation for a period of time. So we'll be looking for that sort of innovation because it's certainly something that NT Shelter has been advocating for.
And are we getting some collaboration? Like, is the government reaching out and asking you to contribute to the paper?
Sure, yes. Look, there was a peak body roundtable that sat for a number of months to hear some of those ideas. So that was very active.
Just one from me there too, Fiona. I think from a national perspective, we know that there's a number of Commonwealth programs too, and I think it's important for all our jurisdictions to really lean into those processes and make sure that their jurisdictions get in their fair share. So one of those is the Housing Australia Future Fund. So there's a current live round for that at the moment, and there's opportunities for the sector up here in NT who are live in that process, but also for the Territory Government to really lean in and make sure that they access those funds for housing in this jurisdiction as well.
Okay. All right. Well, I think you two are probably due for a coffee after the night that you've had. I think you're going to be very grateful when you climb into your beds this evening. And so. Thanks for making some time for us after what was probably a long night.
It's the least we can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it. That's Jackson Wells, CEO